Stabilization wedges, saving the carbon in our atmosphere. We decided which wedges we would use based on the cost, the challenges that we'd face using the wedge, and how parts of the public would react to using these wedges. Our first wedge is the efficiency transport wedge. This increases the automobile fuel efficiency, but where can a single wedge come from? One wedge would come from doubling the efficiency of all the world's cars from 30 to 60 miles per gallon. The challenges that we would face would be car size and power.
Our second wedge is the CCS hydrogen. Hydrogen fuel from fossil sources with CCS displacing hydrogen fuels. Where would a single wedge come from? Producing hydrogen at 10 times the current rate. Challenges we would face is new infrastructure required and safety issues.
Our third wedge is fuel switching electricity. This wedge is replacing coal-burning electric plants with natural gas plants. Where would a single wedge come from? These wedges come from using an amount of natural gas equal to that used for all purposes today. The challenges that we face would be the amount of natural gas that is available.
Our fourth wedge is nuclear electricity. Displace coal-burning electric with nuclear plants. Where would a single wedge come from? The effort France put into expanding nuclear power in the 1980s sustained for 50 years. Challenges we would face are nuclear waste and local opposition.
Our fifth wedge is using wind electricity. This is when wind replaces coal-based electricity. Where would a single wedge come from? Using an area equal to 3% of U.S. land area for wind farms. Our challenges that we face are NIMBY, which is not in my backyard. Our sixth wedge is wind hydrogen. This is when hydrogen is produced with wind electricity. But where would a single wedge come from? A single wedge would come from powering half of the world's cars predicted in 2050 with hydrogen. Challenges faced would be NIMBY, not in my backyard, and safety issues. Okay.
Our seventh wedge is solar electricity. Solar PV displaces coal-based electricity, which is pretty good. Where would a single wedge come from? A single wedge comes from the equivalent of a 100 times 200 kilometer PV array. Some challenges are the PV cell materials in which to obtain.
Our final wedge is forest storage. Carbon stored in new forests. Where would a single wedge come from? Halting deforestation in 50 years. Challenges we would face is biodiversity and competing land use.
As you can see, this is how a wind turbine works. Ultimately, one wind turbine will produce enough energy for 10 houses. This is an example of wind electricity. This is another example of how a wind turbine works.
We get solar energy from the sun. First, the solar energy goes down to the solar panel, which then goes to a charge controller, which leads to a battery. The battery will store the electricity until it is either inverted into AC load, which is for houses, or DC loads, which is for the charging of the battery.
Help us change the world with our stabilization wedges.